Not most.
Okay.
Yeah.
People are sitting at the front because I recognise a lot of them. But the government is required under the Climate Change Act to set a series of budgets, and each of those budgets for a 5-year period are legally binding. So we have to stick to the objectives that we've set. But it goes hand in hand with work that we're trying to do internationally to make sure that other countries are also raising their sights significantly. So Chris Huhne has been lobbying at an EU level to change the target from 20% by 2020, which is the current target, to 30% by 2020, because otherwise it does have an impact on what businesses then choose to do. And again, it's simply no good if businesses then choose to trade in different ways so they can get around that target. So we all have to stick to it.
But some of that can still be counted by us, by us sort of sponsoring stuff that is going on abroad.
Yeah, but if we're really working to raise the target everywhere, that's not going to be so much of an issue. I mean, the harder we push internationally, then the fewer ways there are to get round it, because everybody in our kind of trading circle, if you like, is sticking by those serious advanced targets.
Right, I've got lots more questions actually, so I'll press on. Okay, so just keeping on waste for a minute. Waste prevention.
Really
okay. Well, somebody called Sarah, so obviously not
but
you,
not me.
has asked what measures to encourage waste prevention do you think should be prioritised?
Meaning, do you mean packaging?
I suppose so.
Who's Sarah?
Packaging.
Who's Sarah who asked the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean packaging?
Do you mean packaging and things?
Do you mean? Yeah.
Okay. I don't actually, I'm afraid, know what the government's doing in this particular area, but I do know what my colleague Jo Swinson, who's a Lib Dem MP, was doing, both in opposition and in government, where she's been running a big campaign to try and reduce packaging by supermarkets and, supermarkets and large shops. I mean, I don't know about you, but whenever I do go to the supermarket and buy fruit, it always irritates me that there's often no other way to buy something except in quite large plastic packaging. And one of the things that Jo Swinson highlighted, particularly around Easter, with Easter eggs. Easter eggs, you know, you've got a tiny bit of chocolate, but it's often wrapped in huge swathes of plastic, in foil. Obviously you can recycle the foil, but you often can't recycle the plastic. Then you've got the cardboard box. And it's just not necessary. Trying to persuade manufacturers who are producing things that we're going to buy to do that in a way that is just less wasteful really on the environment. Yeah, sure, we can all recycle it, but even recycling is going to take energy that it would be better if we simply didn't put it in the first place.
Yeah, you talk about persuading manufacturers. Would you ever consider making it compulsory, you know, looking at limits on the amount of packaging that people have to have, you know, so that if there's wasteful packaging, that people have to pay a fine or something like that?
I mean, as I said, I'm afraid I don't actually know the detail of what the government's doing on it, but I do actually think you can go an enormously long way by persuading people. If it becomes more popular, one of the best ways to persuade supermarkets to do something is for it to become an incentive for people to want to buy that product, because then they compete with one another to raise the bar. Sometimes when you just issue legislation, it doesn't necessarily change behaviour. People just find ways around the rules. Whereas what we actually want people to do is to compete to be the best at reducing packaging. So to put things on, whatever it is, that says, we've reduced our packaging by blah. I mean, actually some of the coffee manufacturers, to be fair, have begun to do that. There have been adverts in the last 12 months about people looking at that. So it is beginning to get into people's consciousness, and the more we can get that awareness, I think the more effective it is.
Right, just on another one on slightly on waste, but if we have a quick, I mean, somebody asked with the green boxes, I think this is really a council question, where is the recycled rubbish going and how is it sorted? I think that.
I don't know the answer.
I think that's one we can say for the council members. Okay, let's change the subject a little bit. From Martin Francis of the Brent Green Party, he asks: will the Lib Dems put pressure on the government to increase the capitation and lending powers of the Green Investment Bank, which has been just
this is a really technical question.
Yeah.
I know that Nick Clegg is making an announcement about the Green Investment Bank this week. I don't know the detail of what he is announcing, but the government has set aside £3 billion for that Green Investment Bank. The last government set aside £1 billion. That's a substantial increase. The purpose behind the Green Investment Bank, for those of you who don't know, again, it just sounds very theoretical, but if you buy a new product on a new technology, it's often very expensive at first, but gradually, as people begin to get used to their technology, the price comes down. So if you think about, certainly when I was a teenager, first starting to buy CDs, they were 15, 20 quid, which is, they're probably about that price now, but you can also buy CDs at a much cheaper price. And it's simply what happens with new technology. It tends to be very expensive for a long time, and then all of a sudden it gets much cheaper. And the purpose behind the Green Investment Bank is really to stimulate that process, but for new technologies in renewables, so that it gets cheaper much, much, much quicker, so that it can become much more common and people can actually use that technology sooner. I'm afraid I don't know the technical answer. This is inevitable. If I'm going to do something with Friends of the Earth, I'm going to need a kind of level of detail that's kind of way above my education brief.
That was the Green Party. It wasn't Friends of the Earth. But it may be that some things get cheaper because they get produced en masse in places where people get paid less as well.
That's sometimes the case. That's sometimes the case. The purpose behind the Green Investment Bank is to try and stimulate so that you're investing up front so that you can bring the price down more quickly.
Okay, well this is a question on a different topic. So it says as Minister for Education, but I know, but it's still about climate change. As Minister for Education, how do you feel about my daughter's geography teacher telling the class that climate change is not man-made? And does your department have a policy on this?
Well, there's a national curriculum review going on at the moment, which is looking at curriculum on things like geography, and I am extremely confident that the outcome of that curriculum review will not be to say that climate change is not man-made. Yeah. So, the curriculum review should report later this year, but I'm pretty confident that it will include detail of things like climate change. So perhaps when we have something very much more specific about what people should know in terms of climate change, we might be able to deal with that. How do I feel about it? I think it's pretty unacceptable.
Yeah, so would that be grounds for somebody to complain to their school, would you think?
I would strongly encourage whoever asks this question to take it up with their school and to raise it with the school. And probably with the governing body, because I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be their school's policy.
Right, absolutely. Okay, let's. We've got a question. I think you might be able to deal with this one fairly quickly.
Is this an easier one?
No, it's not an easier one. Would you like a medium one?
I said an easier one.
An easier one.
Oh, well,
this is fairly straightforward from somebody who's obviously not in Friends of the Earth. Somebody called Rodrigo, who says the UN is pushing the green agenda. Who elected the UN? So I think there's a certain amount of rhetorical questioning there. Okay. But basically, what do you think about international?
I actually think climate change is exactly the kind of issue on which we need to work internationally, because what happens on our borders affects everybody else. We can't just pretend that we're not in some way related to neighbouring countries, or that the impact of our actions doesn't affect people in India or Africa. We simply have to work with other countries, and the UN is one of those bodies that we need to use to put pressure internationally. Europe is another, and as I said, there's a lot of activity in the government at the moment to try and make sure that Europe has much stronger targets, because also by getting together with Europe to do that, we have a bigger bargaining power on an international stage to put pressure on people like the United States.
Right, okay, so Phil Fletcher has got a question. Do you want to ask it? Do you know what it is, or do you want to read it out?
I'll ask it because I didn't think I was formulated very well on the paper.
Right.
Shall I get up?
Do you come up and...
Okay. Take the shirt, but take the Right. Hi. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Too close.